All right, so a couple things. We're going to talk about AI adoption in the metals industry, what people are doing, how they're using it, real life use cases, challenges folks are having, a little bit of what's real, what's not. So that's really the goal today. Given the group here, I welcome questions as we go. I've probably got 35, 40 minutes worth of things I can talk about, and I can drag that out to the full, or I can answer questions as we go along. So feel free to jump in, ask questions as we go. Going to do that through talking about four things. I work for a company called Crowe. We're a CPA and technology consulting firm. We've done a technology and metals survey for about 15 years now. So we're going to share some insights from peers of yours in the metals industry, what they're saying about technology, why they're investing, what they're doing with AI. Then going to talk about sort of a foundation of AI, and not from a technical perspective, but what do you need to think about from for your business, from your people's perspective when it comes to AI. Give some examples of how metals and construction, most of the metals industry, are using it today. What are real life examples of folks using it across different domains for different use cases? Share some of those examples and sort of tier through that. Really easy, out of the box, simple things through some more complex, kind of advanced uses. And then a short framework at the end to just talk about, okay, depending on where you are as a company, where you are as a department in your company, how can you go about adopting AI? Real quick, Crowe, we're about 6,500 folks. Like I said, technology and accounting consulting firm. We've got about 1,500 that focus in the metals, about 800 folks that focus in the metals construction industry, about 1,500 clients in that industry. So I'm based up in Indianapolis, and we've got a kind of down the 65 corridor, a bunch of folks that really focus and deliver solutions to that industry. We've had a AI, ML, and machine learning team for about the last 9 years. We hired a couple of data scientists from Google back in 2016 into 15. A lot more PhDs and letters after the name than I'll ever even hope to have. And started building that team up at that time, mostly because in our world of professional services, we're going to probably be one of the most disrupted industries when it comes to things like AI. You think like knowledge worker, business analyst type work, that's like the golden nugget of what AI can make way more efficient, make way more productive. And so we knew if we didn't do something about it, others would, and our business is going to be greatly impacted. My background, I grew up in the construction world. I grew up grinding concrete off of metal forms in the yard of a small GC in Indianapolis. And then post-college got into system implementation, so ERP, CRM system implementation. And that led me into doing that for metals industry. So I've been the last 17, 18 years implementing systems for steel, aluminum, kind of all product worlds, coil, long product, structural, wire, cable, that whole world. So that's my background. As I mentioned earlier, we do this Tech and Metals survey. It covers a broad range of topics, so basic stuff around, budget for technology spend in the coming years. Is it going up? Is it going down? Why are you investing in technology? Trying to help folks understand what peers are doing. We started in 2010. At the end of this, and I think these slides will be available for folks, there's a code if you want to get your hands on this, we can send them out, they're good. It's just good perspective to share as you think about, especially this time of year, a lot of companies budgeting, planning for investments in 25 from a fixed asset perspective, new lines, expansion, but also technology. It's a good tool to understand what are others doing. And we typically do it interviewing a couple hundred executives in the metals industry, trying to do it both from a technology lens, so we'll talk to a CIO, we'll talk to an IT director, also from an operations, from a sales, from a planning, scheduling world, to get perspectives on technology from not only those that are in it every day, kind of responsible for it, but also those that use it every day. So, what did we learn this year in that survey about AI? The big one is, hey, everyone's got a plan to use it in the next 5 years. We saw that almost double on the left there. Almost double usage last year to this year, right? So if you think back in 23, just over 10%, really. And if we took this question back to 2020, it was like 1%. Now, I'd probably argue a lot of people responding may not realize they're using it, but for those that actually realize they're using it, that number almost doubled this year. What I think is going to be interesting is, last year in 23, 41% of our respondents said, we plan to use AI in the next 5 years. Well, next year we're going to start to get to that point with that 5-year window. And so I'm interested to see if that usage actually doubles again. Because if people were, let's say, accurate in their predictions of how they're going to use it, we expect the usage to probably double again for at least 1 more year and maybe the next 2 years. About a quarter of companies, the question here was around generative AI. So that's what we've all heard about, right? The large language model, ChatGPT being the brand name for it, but ChatGPT is really just like Kleenex is for tissue, right? ChatGPT is one of the examples out there. There's a handful, large language models that are really that intelligent, query system that can be used. The question was around how many are using it, and kind of where are you in that world? Almost 40% said we're not using it. Most said, right, experimenting and investigating, right? Different answers. We had a comments portion to this question where folks could say, well, what are they experimenting with? Most were, I'll say, kind of foundational uses of it, right? When we're using it to write the first draft of a response for an RFP, or we're starting to use it to draft up marketing content for our website for an expo booth like this. So some of it, good use cases, also just, that's that kind of basic, like experimenting with it. Others commented on it and said, we tried it out, and the first 3 things it spit back were 100% wrong, and so we paused it for now to figure out, that's a very real, in that large language use case, you got to be careful because it will definitely send back some interesting examples, let's say. This probably highlights why when we say, hey, are you going to use AI in the next 5 years? Yes. If we were to ask a follow-up question, is it 1 to 2 years or is it 3 to 5 years? Most would have said 3 to 5. There's still a ton of hesitation for a lot of different reasons. Some of it around the accuracy of it, some of it around, and you probably can't all see that back there, I'm realizing now. But some around accuracy, some of it just, we don't understand it. Like what is it supposed to do? What are we trying to do with it? Some of it's around, just concerns around the data that's used to supply it, right? And where's that data coming from? Can that data be trusted? And so plenty of hesitation. Some of what we're going to talk about here as far as kind of the roadmap and the framework for doing it will hopefully help for you all as you go back to your companies, think about, okay, removing some of that hesitation and understanding, hey, if we have the right tools or we have the right governance in place, this is how we'll do that. So that's just some foundation. That's what peers out there are saying as it relates to AI from our survey in 2024. So now let's talk about kind of 3 buckets of what we would say you should be prepared for as you're either using, experimenting, or kind of deploying AI tools into your company. The first thing we're going to talk about is kind of 4 things to know before you get started. The second is just how important your data is. You've been hearing that for a long time, I'm sure. If any of you have done any kind of company-wide system implementation, whether it's an MES system on a shop floor or it's an ERP or a CRM system, e-commerce, if anyone's got an e-commerce world, everyone's been telling you the value of the data that your company generates. That's really the foundation of these AI tools, is that data that teaches it, that it learns from. And so that value of data is really important. But then the less technical side and the more people side of it is the organizational change management, right? So how do we help our people get comfortable with it? And also, how do we give our people some guidelines on how we're using this in the company, right? Let's make sure that, because you're going to have folks at both ends of the spectrum, really excited to use it, completely reticent, have no desire to touch it. How do we bring all of them together to say, hey, this is why we're doing it, and this is how it can be helpful for your job? This is now like 3 months old. This is just a snapshot from a couple months ago of how many AI companies are out there, how many AI solutions are out there. There's thousands of them. There's been more than $1 trillion pumped into AI startups over the last 2 years. a lot of the big headlines are around, Google, Microsoft, NVIDIA, and what they're doing on the underlying hardware to make this stuff real. But the reality is most of that money has gone into tech startups that are building an AI tool for the public sector, or AI tool for accounting firms, or an AI tool to help college students write their essays faster, right? And there's thousands of them out there. It is incredibly confusing, and the guidance we give to companies is, as you think about the tools you're going to use, if it's a small startup type company, understand the underlying technology that's behind it to make sure it's coming from a more established source, just because a lot of these are not going to make it. Plenty of them will get acquired and bought up and rolled into a big stack. Some of them will ultimately become sort of the AI tools of the future, like a Slack or a Teams or some of this like Salesforce. But a lot of these won't be around. And so as you think about what AI tools are you going to use at your companies, you don't want to go deep and really far down a path with a tool that in 6 months, maybe a year, may not be there anymore. So just be cognizant of what's that underlying technology, what's behind it, what technology is behind it, and it's something that we feel comfortable will be around a year or more from now. So 4 things to know before you get started. You've got to know where you are today. And I'm going to talk a little bit about sort of a continuum of AI adoption and what that looks like here in a minute. Some common applications. I'm going to talk about 4 specific common applications, and later I'm going to show some specific use cases. Limitations and challenges. So you've really got to know kind of what it is and what it isn't. AI can do some great things when it comes to content creation. AI can do some great things when it comes to kind of the repetitive, mundane office tasks that may occur, right? An inbound web inquiry and how you handle that and the workflow that goes through. Or think about some of the finance tasks that may happen at your company as it relates to payables, receivables, matching, three-way matching, those kinds of things. Those things where there's rules and there's a workflow, AI fits great. But there are realities that are, if it's creating content for you, you have to have somebody checking that before you put it out there, no matter what it is, right? And you've got to make sure that, I've seen it where someone's responding to an RFP, they have ChatGPT write that response, they submit it. Well, their response, ChatGPT basically used their competitor's response to a previous RFP that just happened to be publicly available, right? You respond to an RFP for a city government, and those things are all publicly available. That's what those AI large language models are using to train themselves. So they basically submitted an RFP that was almost word for word what one of their competitors had done for the same RFP and was publicly available. And the city looked at it and called them up and asked, and basically, we didn't review that first, right? So you've got to make sure that if you're using it and putting it out there externally, you have to have a plan in place to check it. You still have them write it because it's a lot easier to edit than it is to write from scratch, but you've got to do that. And the other thing that I'm going to talk a bit more about in a few minutes is just that importance of data. So that first point, where are you today? Right? So we kind of think about the continuum of AI adoption in these 4 steps. That first one being just education, just learning, just what is it? How do we use it? What could it be? And then, sort of getting to out of the box, which just means you got to turn something on and you can use it as is. Getting to these what we call low-code quick wins, that's where it does take a little bit of work. You've got to have a little technical expertise, but it's pretty minimal. And most folks that are comfortable, drag and drop, kind of doing some writing an Excel macro basically, would be very comfortable with that. And then there's what AI agents, and that's really sort of the most advanced world right now. Most companies, 90% companies out there are somewhere straddling the line between education and starting to use things out of the box, right? What are those, whether it's ChatGPT, Perplexity, co-pilots, right, that you may turn on with your internal communications. That's the world that most companies live in. You've got a few that are out there leading, but the pace of change here is so rapid that for any one of your companies to be out there on the end would mean you'd have to have probably an equal number of people just doing AI for your business as you have, running your business, whether it's a roll form or service center or a fabricator, whatever business you're in. The pace of change is such that it's really difficult to get way out there on the far right. So as you think about that foundation, knowing where you are today, knowing where your people are, and as an organization, you'll kind of fit in here, but you'll have folks that may be a little further along, right? And making sure, especially if you're a leader of an organization and thinking about strategic initiatives for 2025, understanding who do I have internally that may kind of be a champion for this, and is someone we could lean on who would get excited to help us as a company adopt here. So try to identify those folks. You have them, they exist, right? They may be using it all for personal purposes, but how can you leverage that and figure out, hey, how we use that as a business? So understanding where you are today is important because that's going to drive what's next. What's your roadmap for AI adoption look like? Couple of common use cases. The first one, and this is the one that's been around for a long time, is intelligent document automation. Think about a decade ago, 14, 15 years ago, things like OCR, right? And that ability to, hey, when someone sends me an invoice, I don't need to have someone manually key that in to my payment system, my ERP system. It can be scanned automatically, or better yet, it comes in via email, gets automatically scanned digitally, and populates what I need in it, right? It removes those keystrokes I need to have someone doing, right? That's a great one. A lot in the construction world right now we're seeing is around contracts. You think about a GC that's got 50 subs on the job, and they want to analyze those contracts and figure out where do we have competing terms or potentially problematic terms between subs and our master agreements and things that are going on. So contract analysis, right? That could be weeks of analysis historically. It's basically instantaneous now. So those are examples of where there are out-of-the-box solutions for it on the intelligent document automation. Sales and demand forecasting, right? So much of that work is basically the review of data, whether it's customer data that they provide, forecasting, whether it's economic data that's available for end markets. Forecasting is all about looking historically at data and forecasted data that may exist publicly or that you may have proprietary, right? What do the last 10 years look like for us? And finding the trends in that. And AI is really good at finding those trends within that data. Hyper-personalization for customers. We all experience this constantly every day when you think about the commerce world that we shop in, right? The emails you get daily from Amazon that say, you may like this. They're usually pretty darn good. Sometimes not, and that's when you know your kid was on Amazon last night looking for things and you go, oh, no, but now you know what they were looking for. But that hyper-personalization of you were looking at this, the last 1 million people that bought that also really like this. That's really good. And that's available for the B2B world that all of you live in, that world of hey, when our customers buy this particular rolled roof product, if we offer this, 85% of the time they also add that on, right? Get a better sale. Because they're going to go somewhere to get that. Why not have that and know that up front? So that hyper-personalization for customers is a pretty common use of AI. The last one is RPA, robotic process automation. That generally refers to this idea of tracking what people are doing on computers today and finding ways to automate it, right? So you'll put basically an RPA tool in your AR department. And for a week, they'll track all the clicks that AR team does within applications or different tools. The goal being to figure out, hey, where are we double entering data? Where are we doing things manually that we could make digital and automate? And so that RPA goal is track, kind of behind the scenes, everything that a certain function or role does today or a process that exists today, and then make recommendations for how do we automate that. The sort of future version of that RPA world is a company today that you think about a lot of the machines that manufacturers have on the shop floor, robots, robot welders, any kind of CNC or lasers or press, anything on the floor, especially a lot of the older tools that are out there, runs on technology that hasn't been supported in a decade, 20 years. I guarantee everyone in this room has things sitting on their shop floor that are self-contained, so you don't really have to worry about it getting hacked, but also if, Steve, who supports that thing, goes on vacation, if it goes down, it's not getting fixed till Steve gets back, because he's the only person that knows what's done there. There are companies now that have built tools that go into that world and not only analyze what that old code and that old technology is doing, but also rewrite it in a modern interface with modern tools that allow all automatically, right? It's not go analyze it, then I've got to hire a developer to figure that out. That tool analyzes it, makes recommendations for how to improve it, and builds the new really application to do that automatically now. That's the evolution of where RPA is going. So let's talk about data. Your data is still, this is old, but like your data as gold is true, right? Because there's not quite an infinite amount of data, but there is getting close to that. And every day, your company generates more data. Some of it's structured, right, in sales orders that you take and purchase orders that you do and shop floor orders that you put out. A lot of it unstructured. Email conversations back and forth with a customer, phone calls with an engineering department at a potential prospect. And so that data is incredibly valuable. And figuring out how do we harness it and filter through the noise, because some of it's just, hey, how you doing? Happy Halloween, happy birthday, happy anniversary to you and the wife, I hope everything's well, those kinds of things. But some of it, you've got that email that says, hey, happy anniversary, hope you guys are great. Then the second line on there is this critical point of, you're getting ready to bid on this new project and this, and this. Well, how do you capture and filter through what matters for your company, what matters for strategic decisions you have to make, and what doesn't, right? So the value of that data and making sure you have a plan in place for both capturing, filtering, and then using that data. If I said if you walk away from here with one thing is, hey, make sure that your leadership teams, your technology and IT teams supporting that can articulate what is our plan with our data? How are we maximizing the value we get out of the data that we generate as a company every single day? The last of the kind of three things to know and be aware of, right, is organizational change management. There's a ton, 72% of companies are nervous or unsure about AI. Most of that really comes down to people and people not sure what to expect, not sure how to use it, not sure what they can and can't do, or maybe not sure if what they've done is appropriate. What is AI? What is the tool, right? How do we use it? Who's going to use this tool? Is this tool going to take my job, right? There's a very real perception of that. I'll say in our business of consulting professional services, right, I mentioned early on, I started my career implementing ERP at steel mills. And what I did when I started that out of college doesn't need to be done by a person anymore, right? I interviewed people about their jobs, about the processes they did. I put it all down on an Excel sheet, documented it, and then start to flip the switches in the ERP system for how it works. That all can be done by AI right now. I'm trying to figure out how it can literally all be done. I don't have to do anything anymore. But I think there is a world out there where so much of what we do from a professional service advisory perspective is now, that knowledge worker is really going to be impacted by AI. So there's a real fear for people of what does this mean for me? And most of that fear comes from just not knowing what it is. And it's back to the different, where folks are, where folks are in their AI journey is educating folks on, hey, here's what it is, here's what it isn't. Here's what we expect from it. It's going to, right now, the world of AI is really all about co-pilots. So you've probably seen that term, right? Whether it's in tools you use and the software provider said, hey, we've got a new co-pilot here. Microsoft started it, but Salesforce, they're all using it now. And the idea of a co-pilot is just that. They're sort of alongside your people today to help them in their daily jobs, right? To help them do things more efficiently, to be more productive, to get the people and their expertise focused on the exceptions, focused on the high value work they do, and letting some of the more mundane, repetitive, lower value activities be done by a co-pilot. That's really the world we're in today. Co-pilots, although not that old, are pretty mature, and the things they can do, I'm going to start to get into some use cases, are pretty impressive. What's next is this agent world, and that agent world is what it's described as. The goal of the agent world is to let the agent go and run and do a job, right? A couple of examples here in a minute. One that I always think about is, so often now you get an inbound web inquiry or an inbound, into this conference. People that have booths out there are going to have a list, right, of hopefully hundreds of folks they met that are leads for their company. Today, most companies, the sales team or the sales leader go back, they divide those up, and everyone starts sending their emails. Hey, great to meet you. We talked about this. Let me know what next steps are, type of thing. The reality is, companies that are leading the way in this agent world are now saying, hey, that's great. When we're at this conference, I'm going to scan someone's badge. I'm going to put in 2 notes about it, and our agent is going to send that follow-up email. And in fact, they're going to send that follow-up email before the day even ends. Because my sales team is still on the floor, meeting more folks, trying to develop more business, but sending an email that simply says, it's nice to meet you. Great to have that discussion. We talked about this, this, and this. Here's what we would do for next steps. Now you can create structure and repeatability in that process and allow your salespeople to keep meeting new folks on the floor. So that's an example of an agent where it's not the co-pilot that's alongside sort of drafting an email, then the salesperson. They're doing all of that work by themselves. The other big example in the agent world is customer service. There's a company in Europe that went from handling, with 1,000 customer service agents, went from handling 1,000 cases a day to 10,000 cases a day by adding 2 customer service agents. And the reason they did that, and they did that in a way that their customer satisfaction score from folks that were helped improved over a 6-month period. And the reason it improved is the agents were faster at the simple, basic response and answers. Like, hey, reset your router, or unplug and plug it back in, or check this, check this, check this. Oh, great, that solved it, it's done. These agents are faster at doing that than a customer service rep who has to type in the computer, look up. I mean, you can hear, right, when you call for support from a vendor, from somebody at home, you hear them clicking in the background. They're searching a knowledge base. Well, how fast can a human search a knowledge base versus an AI agent that can search it instantaneously? And so they were able to, one, those simple requests that come in, they can eliminate those almost instantaneously. They can also do it 24/7, anywhere in the world, from any device. And then their people, the customer service agents that were there, they were able to take on the more complex things, the ones that require some nuance, that require some questioning, that need more experience. And so now you have folks that needed a quick, simple answer are getting it faster, and folks that have complex questions are dealing with someone that doesn't have the same time crunch and pressure of getting answers out and can focus on taking care of the customer in the way they want. I should do a time check. Okay, good. All right, so a couple of, before I get into some use cases, like I said, if there's questions, feel free. It's 8 a.m., it's day 2. Yesterday was a long day, if you're good. But as we go, because some have joined us, we're in, feel free to ask questions as we go. So I'm going to talk about a few use cases. I'm going to do it in the context of kind of step 1, step 2, step 3, out of the box, low code, and then the agent world. So the first one, this is, right, ChatGPT. If you can do this one of 2 ways. One is using ChatGPT in the current world that is the external, facing the internet, and just all data all over the world to get answers about things. The other is you can feed ChatGPT certain information, right? The example I use here is like a 300-page PDF, and I need a complex summary or a complete summary of that, whether it's an RFP, whether it's drawings, whether it's designs. And it can feed back to me not just an answer that says, hey, I found that word 9 places in the document, but I found that word 9 places in the document. Here's the context each time. We think there's a conflict here on these 2. You should ask a clarifying question about that. So that's just basic inquiring of large data sets and providing insight to that, right? Something that otherwise would have required you or someone at your company to read through that whole thing, make notes on it, and you got to send it around and other people look at it. Now that's done instantly. That's one example. That's out of the box today. The other is searches. Perplexity is an example of this. ChatGPT is too. Even now, if you go to Google, type in a search, you see the top of it is Gemini, I think, is Google's AI tool. Like the first answer is all AI now. Like those search results below that, I mean, I don't know if it's this year, but in the next 2 or 3 years, Google may still be the dominant one here, but it won't be in the traditional sense of like, did we optimize our website so that when someone searches for painted metal roof in Texas, our company comes up? Google search engine optimization will not exist in that way, right? Because folks will use an AI tool to get them not just the one that has fine-tuned their web page with the right keywords and the right links and all. It's really become gamified so much that suggest and strongly encourage, traditional search engines being replaced for your people with an AI search engine, right? And that can be ChatGPT, it can be Perplexity, there's others, they're free, there's paid versions. Generally, the difference in the free versus the paid is how current is the data that thing was trained on. So that's the only thing to be aware of. The free version sometimes, hey, that may have been trained on data that was a year old. So if you're working in a world of, I need data that was no more than a month old, that may be where you click over to the paid one. The next example, meetings. We all have them. Yeah.
Before you move on, if would you say that there was 3 things the company should focus on to transition from standardized SEO to the way they kind of gamified now to leverage it to AI?
Yeah.
Right. What would you say the focus should be?
It's a good question. My day job is technology. My second job at Crowe is I'm responsible for our Microsoft go-to-market, so our sales and marketing world. So we're trying to answer that same question. I don't have great answers. What I will tell you is most of that has to do with the pretty steady stream of content and education around whatever it is you do. So part of it is just simply saying, what do we offer? And making it clear and simple and concise. That's right. That's exactly it, right? You want to be, when the AI engine spits out an answer, you want to be one of the reference points they put. Hey, this is where I got this answer from, right? So it's having your content there, and then it's refreshing that on a regular basis with meaningful information. So I think that's one of them. The other is, depending on what your volume of business that comes through that channel, right? Really understanding how much business comes directly because someone finds us in a search, right? Understanding exactly what it is they're searching, understanding are there other venues to find those people out? Are there other things, events like this? Are there associations? Our bet at Crowe is the community world is going to get more and more important, meaning finding a community of individuals that both similar to us, competitors if you will, but also where our buyers come together. We think that idea of kind of hyper-focused community is going to be really important, and associations like this and publications that sponsor this are going to be where it's really important to be a part of and have your experts there sharing their perspective, sharing insight, because we think that's, as this stuff moves more and more digital and more into the AI world, the reality of relationships and the people to people just becomes more important. So meeting, right? Next use case out of the box. We all have meetings. We all take notes in meetings. We all take those notes and summarize them and put them in an outline and share them with our team, and our team feeds it back. But oops, I left 2 people off that meeting. Forgot to invite them. Or the meeting was last week and we just had a new hire come in today, and I really wish she could have been there for that meeting because what she's doing directly relates to it. This is whatever internal chat you use, whether it's Slack, whether it's Teams, whether it's Google, whatever chat you use today, whatever meeting mechanism, Zoom you use today, has the ability to record and transcribe those meetings, share that afterwards. You have to do it, right? Because the ability, especially as an executive, to get a summary of what's happened from the day and get it in one email the morning that says, my team, my 20 salespeople yesterday had these meetings, here's the insights. 5 people had the same conversation with 5, oh, hey, I need to key in on that. Like, you can do that today. What today typically would have taken like end of week, team meeting, we spend 90 minutes talking through what everyone did, hoping that all the people show up for that meeting, hoping that they remember what they talked about on Monday, hoping that they say it in a way in which it clicks that, that connects to what she was saying yesterday and he said today. You don't have to do that anymore, right? These tools will do that, and they'll do it better than any human ever would, and they will immediately start to pay dividends for your company and for you as you make decisions about what's next. So just turn on the recording meetings, turn on the transcripts, share it with the company. And some people will initially be hesitant, right? Some will say, hey, this is, I'm not comfortable with that. Like, what are you going to do with that? Sometimes it's internal, sometimes it's external. On the external side, hey, guys, this is for our internal learning, right? We want to get better at not asking you the same question 3 times. We want to get better at understanding what your needs are and making sure we can get your needs to the right person. Internally, challenge them a little bit, right? If they push back and go, I don't want you recording what I'm saying and talking about, why not, right? Like, what are you talking about those things that we're going to make you more productive, right? If you're talking about this topic and we have others in the company that know about that topic and maybe you don't know that they know, we want to bring that together, improve our sales results, improve our efficiency on the floor, whatever it may be. This is a very specific one to the finance world, and I kind of alluded to it earlier, but just the matching of discrepancy, right? Payment discrepancies. Today there's a whole data reconciliation world that most finance teams go through on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis. Hey, why don't these match up? So much of that data reconciliation, data world can be done by AI. So think about, hey, in the finance world, how are we doing that? Getting data from email or other tools, email, chat, wherever, into your systems of record. So whether that's an ERP system, whether that's a CRM system, right? Those are these systems of records that every business has that sort of says, well, how's the business doing, right? And they ultimately drive the reporting and insights that you use as a company. But how often does the email that comes in with order information or with quick change or quick updates, how often does that actually get from that email into the system of record so it's there for analysis, right? There are lots of pretty straightforward out-of-the-box ways to just simply feed data from those unstructured sources into your structured systems of record. So low-code ways. So now we're kind of stepping up, right? So step 1 was all the out-of-the-box. All those things I just talked about are basically turning them on in the tools you're probably using today, right? So talk with IT teams, talk with your vendors. What are you offering in the tool today that's AI related, right? What are you offering that can help me record meetings, that can help me transcribe, that can help me get data from A to B? There's going to be a little code required, right? It's going to take a little time, but they're pretty straightforward. If someone's writing advanced macros, someone's doing any kind of internal development for your company, they're going to be able to tackle these. This idea of populating a knowledge base and creating a knowledge base for the company, right? Whether it's around engineering drawings, whether it's around product knowledge base, right, for salespeople that are out there, that process of writing, hey, here's what this product is, here's typical use cases for it, here's examples of where we used it today. That world can all be automated with AI, and it can be continually updated. The biggest challenge we see with knowledge bases is there's a big initiative for a company. We're going to get all of our knowledge from all of our great people together, get it documented, get it in a place that people can search. We finished that project on December 24th of 2024. By January 1, 2025, it's already out of date, and we have no plan in place to update that, right? Something changes, right? We create a new product. The customer asks for a new spec. That comes through. How do we update that? Using AI to update that knowledge base is really important. This is more applicable if you're in the world and you have developers in-house. You have teams in-house that are writing custom code, that are building applications for you, whether for sales teams or finance teams on the shop floor. Development can be 10 to 20 times more productive now with some of the AI tools that exist for them around code, right? What used to take 10 developers a month to build is now 1 developer in a week. Because code is just, it's logic, it's if this, then that, it's rules, and computers are way better at that than people are. And even your best developers have no chance at keeping up. Right now, the best developers are the ones who can leverage these co-pilot tools for development to help them go faster and be more productive. Abstraction, so this is the contract one I talked about earlier, where that idea of I've got 50 contracts, subcontractors on a given project, or I've got 50 customer contracts and I need to analyze it for risk that I have. Rather than paying an outside counsel or a law firm to go do that, and they're just going to hand it off to a first-year law student and say, read all these and tell us if you think anything's conflicting. AI can do that in seconds, and so leveraging that. So the last bucket, that phase 3, is agents, and the idea of agents and knowing where agents are. We've talked about a few of these examples. This idea of somebody sends an email to a sales guy, or sends a text, or sends a chat, or sends a there's 100 ways, right, that orders come in today. How do we get that captured and quickly into our ERP system? We're working with a client. It's got about 150 service center locations throughout North America, and they found out that like 62% of their orders came in via email, PDF, Excel, all these different formats, right? They thought, when we first asked them the question, like 80% of our orders are phone calls. Well, we did analysis, it's not. Most come in through some kind of structured data. But even a phone call now, you can record that phone call coming in and do this. And right, what this does is it says, my seller doesn't have to do the keying in this data, I'm checking if it's in inventory. We can get the whole first quote, right? If there's quoting something that we stock or we have, that gets done instantly by an agent out to the customer. And now my rep is calling to follow up and ask interrogation questions on, is there more? Hey, what's this for? How are you going to use this? You've ordered this before, and last time you ordered this, you also ordered these pieces. Or last time you ordered this, it was for this type of project, and you told me at the time that I also needed this structural component. Well, we have that now. So it allows that agent to spend less time just rekeying data from an email or a PDF and more time interacting with the customer to grow that relationship. This is more for, if you think about turning requirements into, or turning a conversation into requirements. This would come, think about you sitting down with a builder or with an engineer, and they're talking about sort of conceptually a plan, right? Maybe they don't have it fully fleshed out. You're in an early stage meeting with them. They've got ideas for a plan. You record that. You can have an agent take that and create basically a project plan. Oh, here's what we need to do internally, or here's some subcontractors or suppliers we need to call to talk about that. So these agents can start to take the action items from a meeting and go act on those. So it's not just recording the meeting, transcribing it, and saying, here, do something with this. It's recording the meeting, putting it into logical structure, and then taking action on it, reaching out to suppliers, checking on shop floor schedules, creating a project plan for you as a company. So that's the evolution of agents that are not just alongside, but are now executing on tasks that they identify. And the important thing about agents is, in an old world, if you knew every possible outcome, you could write an application to do that. You could write the code that creates the application to do that. So you'd write the code and, hey, if this, then that, if this, then that. The benefit of agents is you don't have to tell them every scenario, right? They learn through time, and the agent, I say they, it's a computer system, but the agent makes the decision. The agent's making the recommendation based on not the knowledge of just one worker, but on the collective knowledge of your entire organization that you've fed that agent with information. And so that's the big evolution of this is you don't have to know every scenario and program for every scenario that's going to exist. You have to give it the data, give it the knowledge, and it will start to act on it and make those decisions. The last one, this goes maybe to some of the marketing question earlier. You can use agents to scour the web and other sources for information and create your content, right? Create a podcast, create white papers, create presentations, webinars, those kinds of things. It's a bit terrifying, but the concept of like a deep fake, right? That's all just AI, right? If you see someone's voice can be with about like 6 words, that voice can be recreated to say anything pretty much perfectly. I mean, except for a linguistics expert, you're going to be able to do that. So the benefit of that is, yes, you can have an agent scour, create the content, write the script, and then have your CEO or one of your engineers record that podcast and put it out. Or you can use tools to say, hey, here's the voice, go create that content. And now I've created content, put content out at a much more rapid pace while our CEO is actually spending time with customers or spending time out in the market, sort of doubling up on that. All right, so in the last couple of minutes here, I just want to introduce this idea of this framework and sort of how you do this, right? So number one, figure out where you are as a company. Are you a company that's ready for this and people are asking about it, people want to use it, or are more people nervous and unsure of it, right? If it's the nervous and unsure, hey, we've got to educate. We've got to educate what it is, what it isn't, the value of it. So much of that early stage awareness and education is just around people. It's around people readiness, people awareness, and people education. That's where you start. So get people level set, and level set as a company. Hey, we're excited about this. We're going to adopt this. We're going to do it in the right way. We're going to do it in a appropriate way. But we're going to do this. Then it's start looking for quick wins. Those are those out-of-the-box ones. That's turning on the meeting recording. That's having your marketing team, instead of writing every single product description on a website or every RFP response, use AI to start those drafts, right? So those are the quick wins. It's out of the box. It's easy. Anybody can do it. You got to have control. You got to have governance. You got to make sure you understand how they're doing it. And most importantly, document how people are using it and what the results were, right? So as you start these quick wins, as you start doing these things, have someone documenting and keeping track of how did we use it, what worked, what didn't, what was the outcome. Was it good, was it bad, was it the same as before? Start to understand what that looks like. As you get to that stage 3, that's that strategic integration. So that's where now we're going to start talking about, hey, anytime we're making a strategic investment, we're going to get into a new in-market, in-segment, or we're going to expand to a new geography, or we're going to make an acquisition as a company. Now we're thinking about not only how does that acquisition impact what we do with AI, but how do we embed AI in that? Right? How is AI? Can we make this acquisition? Maybe it's on the edge of what we thought cost-wise it should be, but we know that we can come in there and bring those AI wins, and suddenly, instantly, it becomes a better win for us, a more strategic acquisition for us. The last one, the AI-driven transformation, that's where companies that are out there, the customer service one I mentioned earlier, that have basically completely upended their business model using AI. That's going to be early on. It's going to be a lot of the knowledge worker type world, the accountants, the lawyers, that world where it's reading data, assessing it, analyzing it, and providing an input. A lot of that's where this is going to start, right? That's who's going to be really disrupted. But eventually that will expand to more and more instances. So I'm going to wrap there. We've got about 10 minutes left. If there's any questions, I'm going to be around. Yeah, go ahead.
What's your take on the Google algorithm? My understanding is it ranks AI content
Yeah.
lower. Somehow it understands, well, this was written by AI, so you can't just punch in, hey, write me an article on metal roofing and put it out there. Is
Yep.
that true?
Yeah, the current SEO rankings that they do knock you a point for if the content that's created, they derive from the metadata underneath it. I don't know how. If I did, I would be on an island somewhere. They derive, hey, if you wrote this content plain, that's 1 point. And if it's generated by AI, it's a half a point. That's today. Google also has at the very top of every search result their AI result. So fairly confident that's a short-term thing they're doing. That's a short-term thing to not completely blow up their rankings.
What's the workaround? So let's say you have, for example, of the
Yeah, I mean,
AI and then go in and like, hey, we humanize this. Does that?
it helps, right? Now, even if you take what was AI generated and you have someone rewrite it, literally just retype it and put it out there, it's not the actual, the way it's written, they'll know. So the workaround is, yeah, have someone take that draft. What we do a lot is say, hey, create an outline for me of this topic and give me 3 questions I need to answer. And if you use the prompt to create questions for your experts to answer, now those answers are in your expert's voice, their opinion, their view. That typically works pretty well. So use AI to create the prompts, the questions, to generate the content. That's right. That's right. Because your SMEs, your experts still have the knowledge that doesn't exist out there, or they have it in their own perspective on it, their own view on it. So use AI to say, hey, I need an article about this topic. Give me 3 questions that I should ask an expert on this topic. And then let your experts actually answer those questions. And then you can feed those answers into it and say, okay, take these answers to these questions and put the article together. And that's pretty good.
How does AI generated content rank in social media? Is it the same as Google?
Yeah, that's a good question. I actually don't know. I don't know.
Create a video to describe
And yeah, and put it on LinkedIn. I don't know how that would rank in your LinkedIn. Yeah, that's a good question. I'll see if I can't find out. I'll grab a card and find out. Yeah, I don't know how, and it's probably different for each social media platform, right? But I'm not sure how that impacts it. Couple of questions. I think we've covered all these, but just things to think about. What are those small wins you can start using back with your company? Start thinking about unstructured data and how do we start to leverage that? How do you get value out of it? Find out who's already using these tools today for your company and give them a second job to help create that vision for what you want to do within a company. From an IT leadership perspective, whether it's in-house or you use a third party, find out what you're doing around security for these things, right? Especially if you have team members that are putting maybe proprietary information into ChatGPT or other large language models like that to get answers out. Once that gets in there, in most cases, that is now free domain for that tool to use to train its algorithms, which then means it's going to be shared with someone else who asks the same question. So make sure you understand what controls you have in place for any proprietary data you have that you may not want out there training those algorithms. Whether it's Microsoft Copilot, whether it's whatever, turn those things on and start using them day to day. They're there, they're really good, and they will help. That QR code is for the survey, if anyone wants one, or come grab me. And then I'm also going to throw up here for MetalCon, the left one is the survey for the session, if you get time. They also gave me some paper ones, so I like the irony of an AI session. If you want to fill out a paper survey, they did give us those if you're more the paper version. But I want to say thank you to all for coming in. 8 a.m. on day 2 is good. Hopefully, if you're a Dodgers fan, you enjoyed that last night. And if you're a Yankees fan, I'm sorry. But yeah, thanks everyone for coming in. I know there's a keynote coming up in a few minutes, so I'll be around for a little bit here today if you have any questions. And otherwise, enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you.